Well, folks, we're back with Adam Coleman, three-time appearer on Noggin Notes. I think you're leading the pack now. I don't think anybody's ever been on here three times. You're,
I thought you were gonna say
you're
three-time champion, but I'll take
you
three-time
could be.
appearance.
If you've appeared in at least every year, once every year, you could be three-time champion of the year. We could say you're the best one of the year. It is. I don't know
There you
when
go.
did we first meet? 2021, 22, something like that.
COVID makes my timeline all messed up, so I don't
Yeah. Yeah,
remember.
I know. Yeah. But either way, Adam is now taken the crown, if you will, for most appearances on Noggin Notes. So Adam Coleman, founder of Wrong Speak Publishing, IT guy by day and author by night, influencer, commentator. I don't know what we call you, but welcome back. Thanks for making the
Thank
time.
you. No,
What's
I
that?
appreciate it.
What's Adam's travels? You're wearing that shirt. What is it?
So it's an old shirt, one, so I have to put that out there first.
Oh.
Before, so before COVID hit, I was traveling a lot. Um, Usually like a couple times a year, I was going back and forth between the US and Europe. I was
Mhm.
bouncing around. And so I started a blog called Adam's Travels. And
Ah.
I would detail like where I went, who I met, uh, gave tips, things like that. It's very, very small. Barely
You're
anybody
you're
went
like
into it
Fromers before Fromers or after Fromers or something like that.
after, definitely
Yeah.
after. I probably had it for maybe like a year or so. And then COVID hit and I was like, well, it doesn't make sense to
Guess I'm
pay
not
for a
traveling.
travel site when no one's traveling.
Yeah.
Um, so I got rid of it and ended up getting wrong speak instead.
You do still travel a lot. I noticed that in your writings, but also just because we're buddies.
Mhm.
You've taken several trips with your wife, and you do some stuff internationally with certain organizations, and I think that's one of the things I really respect about what you're doing is you don't just hypothesize, you actually go and immerse. And I think that's really cool. If we're going to appreciate other cultures and have opinions about them, we probably should experience them. So that's one good thing. If you're not familiar with Adam or you haven't heard him on here before, really invite you to check out Wrong Speak, and it's wrongspeak.net. I'll just say that for you now. Then you can
Mhm.
tell everybody else where they can meet you later. But that's not why you're on today. You are endeavoring something that I was not aware of until you brought it to the audience's attention, and that is that we have a massive problem in this country with illegal immigrants in the trucking industry. And I don't know how this escapes consciousness, probably because it's just not something that's covered, but I was alarmed. And, as much as we might want to roll our eyes at illegal immigration, thinking, the caricature type of, the Southern American, sorry, the South American or the Central American or the Mexican immigrant who came here and is working some job for low wage. Okay, that's fine. But the trucking industry is a totally different beast, and I'm not going to spoil it. You can spoil it by telling the story, but this is shocking. Like, and something absolutely needs to be done. This isn't like raise our fist in the air and go, someone must do something. Like this, lives are being lost, and it's not good, and people are being abused, and this is really modern day slavery. It's indentured servitude. So, with that as the framework, go ahead and start wherever you want to start, and I'll just sprinkle in my questions because I'm still largely ignorant of this, even though you and I talked for like an hour about it the other day.
Actually, one side thing. I'm just gonna grab some water. You might have to
Go
cut
go
here. I
grab
was
your
just
water, and I'll just soliloquy here for the listening audience. If you're
uh,
watching on
um,
YouTube, Adam just left. Oh, he's back. That was really quick. I was
yeah.
expecting you to have to walk down the hallway. I didn't have to fill much airtime at all.
No, no, it was on the other side. Um, I'm going to preface by saying that whatever I tell you is actually worse, and it keeps getting worse.
Oh, this is
That's the
great.
one, yeah, that's the one thing that I've discovered because for me it was about learning one for the first time that there are illegal immigrants within trucking because I had no idea, and that doesn't even seem like a thing that would even exist.
Right.
We're always hearing about agriculture and all these other different areas. Um, but then when I really started to ask questions and find out, like, not just are they there, how many potentially are here, how did they get in that position in the first place? And with every question, the answer makes it far worse of a situation in the United States. So the first thing I will say is that the FMCSA is a regulatory body that is underneath the Department of Transportation.
What's that
So,
stand for?
was it Federal Motor Carrier something
Probably
something?
something administration. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's a federal thing.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's a federal. Yeah, basically, it's a regulatory body specifically for the trucking industry, and so the FMCSA acknowledges that there are somewhere around 200,000 illegal immigrant truckers in the country. However, other outside estimates show some show 600,000, some show 800,000. It is really hard to tell because one, they're illegal immigrants, and it's hard to track this entire thing. And it becomes even more obvious when I detail like how the web works, how they end up in these particular positions. Um, but just starting with the plain number, it is extremely hard to tell um, how many are actually here. For all we know, there's millions. Like we just
Right,
don't
right.
know. Um, so with that being said, why are we now finding out about this? The biggest reasons we're finding out about this, I would say there's two pivotal points for the trucking industry. We have to also understand that truckers are truckers, right? They're not media people. They're not necessarily tech savvy. They're truckers, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Um, However, the truckers have known that there's an issue for quite some time. And the truckers haven't had a voice, right?
What are
No
we
one's
talking
listened.
when you say quite some time, what are we talking, years or decades or what?
Yeah. I would say there's different pivotal points. Some would say you can start seeing the changes starting from the Obama administration, but the real kickoff point was under the Biden administration. Um, and we could actually, I can pivot into that if to kind
Sure,
of
yeah, yeah,
describe
go
that.
wherever you want.
So under the Obama administration, we've always had an English language standard. That started in the 1930s. So every person who gets a CDL, who drives a truck, must be proficient enough in English. So be able to read English and speak English, right? So they have to be able to communicate in English. That's always been a standard. What started happening is under the Obama administration, there was, I believe, like a memo that was sent that basically instructed, when they go to checkpoints and stuff like that, that we are no longer penalizing it, right? And so we're not really enforcing it. So it didn't mean that they got rid of the rule, they just stopped enforcing the English language standard.
Mm-hmm.
There are reasons behind it, but let's just say that's the starting point. So that's a big starting point. So because of that, if there are people who showing up who are struggling with English language, there's no real record of it because they're not checking for it anyways. Fast forward the Biden administration flooding people coming in through the southern border. They flood the asylum system, right? So now there are people who are in our country, within our borders. Instead of the stay in Mexico policy that Trump had, Biden's doing the reverse. So they're in our country. So now we're responsible for these people. And now we have people who are sitting here maybe for 3, 4 years before they can go to court for their asylum claim because we
Right,
just
right.
completely flooded the
Yeah,
system.
our infrastructure isn't good enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Biden administration started authorizing these people to work within the country. And I don't know if a lot of people know that. One of the areas that they started allowing for these people to work was within the trucking industry. Part of that reason is because there's been a narrative for decades that the trucking industry has a shortage of truckers. They said that forever, right? Yet somehow we always get our goods. So because of that, that's a narrative that's pushed by politicians, by lobbyists, by the trucking industry, which trucking industry lobbyists who tend to be lobbyists for the top of the trucking industry, not the below, not the truckers themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they're going to, yes, we have a shortage. Trucking industry has always had turnover, not necessarily a shortage. And those are two different things. But just like any other industry, if you flood an industry filled with potential employees, what does that do? It drives down wages. The cost of labor decreases. Who does that benefit? Not the average trucker, not the American trucker. It benefits the brokers, the large trucking companies, the shippers too. So, of course. So when the Biden administration not only allowed for them to get work authorization to flood into the trucking system. And there's a lot of questions if these people should have been even allowed to get CDLs. That's a whole other conversation. But what's when that was when that decision started when that decision was made, what it did was it sprouted CDL schools throughout the country,
Mm,
and it became
hmm.
an explosion of CDL schools. Part of that reason, here's another part that happened at the same time. The Biden administration allowed for CDL schools to self-certify.
So no regulation, they're just stamping their own paperwork. So,
Bingo.
so if I'm building this correctly in my head, we've got a flood of people who shouldn't have been here in the first place because they suspended the rules for immigration. They overwhelmed an industry, well, probably many industries, but we'll center on this one. An industry that, because wages drop, uh, tax-paying Americans can't afford to work there because they're not getting enough to pay the bills. Um, then the people who are working may not even have, well, language proficiency for sure, but also driving proficiency because who knows if they know how. And then on top of that, getting a commercial driver's license, which is CDL for those who aren't familiar with that term. A commercial driver's license is an extra special set of schooling that you have to go to make sure that you're knowing how to drive the bigger rigs properly. And in this case, we're talking about big semi trucks, not, but it also applies to school buses and large box vehicles and whatnot. So this is a rapidly evolving crisis. Now I can already mentally project other downstream problems, including other rules that don't get adhered to. But I'm not going to jump ahead in the PowerPoint, so to speak. So please continue.
Yes, and what you just said is 100% correct. So we'll go to the CDL schools because you mentioned that before. Um, the CDL schools are a pivotal point because one, that's how they're getting their CDL so easily. And these CDL schools, because they're self-certified, they're kind of on their own and just doing whatever they want. And so what they end up becoming, you might hear the term one of these days, CDL mills, right?
Yeah.
Just like a diploma mill,
Yep.
like you're not really earning it. They're just, yeah, 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 you did enough, and then just
Rubber
send you
stamp.
a
The mill
CDL.
makes its money.
Yes,
Everybody's happy, right?
exactly. Excuse me. So everyone's happy. So to give people an idea, when you go to a real CDL school, you're in CDL school for maybe 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes longer, depending on the school, right? It's written in English. Its instructions are in English. You're going through the entire process, and you could actually fail, or you have to go longer until you pass. With these CDL schools, these guys are getting 2 to 3 days. So not only do they not, many of them know and understand English properly, they're getting a crash course into driving a massive vehicle on the road that can have weight upwards of 80,000 pounds, and then being held responsible for how successful they are in driving constantly on our roads. So it's incredibly dangerous as to what's going on because of this particular environment. So that's where the CDL schools are really big in this equation. The next step is, well, who is hiring these people? And that to me is probably the most important part because without this element, it doesn't matter if there's illegal immigrants within the trucking industry, but they need to be hired by somebody. And what is happening is, back in what was it, the 70s, 80s, we used to talk about Jimmy Hoffa, we had the Italian mob running the trucking industry, the Teamsters, and all this other stuff. They deregulated, all that stuff has disappeared. What I have to emphasize to people is that within the trucking industry, we have the mafia and the mob. It just doesn't look the same way as decades before. We have organized crime that is running rampant within the trucking industry. The difference is that it is different ethnic enclaves throughout the country. And so we have, just to give some examples, in Southern California, you got the cartel. Northern California, you have the Punjabs. Chicago area, you have the Ukrainians and other Eastern Europeans. Um, in Ohio, Indiana, you have Uzbeks. Philadelphia, you have some Eastern European elements as well. Like the list goes on. There's a lot in the heartland, but there's a list, and it's all over the country. And I wish I could say like, all right, well, it's just those like 5 places or something. It's all over the country, everywhere you go. Um, Oh, in Minnesota, you have Somalis, right? So there's different ethnic enclaves. And this isn't just like, oh, where there are some guys who have a trucking company and they're hiring other people who are of the same ethnic enclave. It is organized. They all do the same thing, just with their own demographic. And it's systematic. So to give an example, let's say I'm Uzbek and I want to come to America. There are operations where they are finding ways to make it to Mexico. They have a variety of ways they might do that. They get smuggled into the country because also keep in mind these guys are with the trucking industry, which means they have trucks. And what can you put in the back of trucks? People,
Right. And yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there's human smuggling elements to this entire equation, especially when you have people who are part of organized crime. So many of them are being smuggled in by the same element, or they're being smuggled in by a third party, but they have a connect. And so these guys get smuggled into America. They have the same ethnic enclave connect where they are being told, you go to this CDL school. In a few days, they come out of CDL school with their CDL and they're given a truck. Because you have to think like, imagine if I just up and moved to Zimbabwe. I don't know anybody in Zimbabwe. I don't know the laws of Zimbabwe. How would it be like possible in just a matter of a few weeks that I'm behind a truck in Zimbabwe driving it? How does that make any
Yeah, you got to have
sense?
help.
Well,
Yeah.
you have to have help. And so these guys are it's what I call like a play. They all do the same thing. So they send them to their ethnic enclave school that is, we'll just use Uzbek, but Uzbek friendly. They speak Uzbek to them. They're not supposed to give them instruction in Uzbek, and their tests are supposed to be in English. Whether that happens is a different story. They pass their test, then they're given a truck where they're technically leasing that truck from the very people that they're working for. So instead of for us, we work for an employer who gives us truck, it's the employer's truck. And so they're paying us to work for them. They treat everyone as 1099 employees. They treat them all like contractors. They actually show them how to create an LLC. So they do everything through an LLC contractor situation, not as an employee. So they understand the system, they understand how to circumnavigate everything. They're being instructed what to do. Not only do the to go to the what you said before that these guys are indentured servants. It's 100% true for many of these guys. Maybe not all of them, but for many of these guys. They're told you come here, you drive a truck, you make a ton of money. But what they're not told is the truth that they'll come here and they're going to work constantly, 6, 7 days a week, where they're driving a truck for 20 hours a day. And they live in their trucks and they have to live in their trucks because they're essentially paying rent to drive the truck. And they don't have enough money to live anywhere else, and they drive too much to live anywhere else, anyways. So these guys live, sleep in their trucks. Sometimes they might have like a stash house. I've heard of these situations where they have a stash house, and that's where they'll go there. There might be a bed, but there's also like 10, 15 other guys who are sleeping there too, right? On their 1 or 2 days off the road. But then they go back into their trucks and they're driving constantly. So where they're the most dominant, you're not going to see these guys really dominant and like you said, driving buses or anything like that, because that's not where the money is, and that's not where this particular labor excels. It excels in long haul trucking. It excels in cross country trucking. And so to kind of like cap this off a little bit, because they're in long haul trucking, they circumnavigate everything and they overshadow the biggest advantage. The biggest advantage for them is that they can drive longer than the American because the American has something to lose if they go past, because I believe it's 11 hours, and they're not allowed to drive past 11 hours in a day. They have to rest for a certain amount of time before they can even get back on the road. Well, these guys, they work for shady trucking companies who will modify their logs, or they might even go outside their truck and switch the name of the company and continue another 10, 11 hours on the
Wow.
road, right? So these guys are driving constantly. And on top of that, they're illegal and they have no real say. And but their actual bosses who are giving them the loads and telling them where to go. These guys are making, they're the ones actually making the money. They still make more money even though they're undercutting the Americans because they do everything in a shady way. So, for example, do I think that these guys are paying taxes? No, I don't think they're paying taxes. They're definitely not paying employee taxes, right?
Yeah.
They're hiring illegals. They're not paying employee taxes. So that's an advantage. They put these guys in old, crappy trucks, which is if you were to look at some of the shady operators in the trucks that they drive and how many violations these guys get, like you name it, brakes, tires, like chassis, all types of stuff. These guys get violations like galore. And I sometimes wonder about these truck accidents if the reason why they're getting into an accident is because many times they say there was no brakes applied. I wonder if their brakes just go out.
Right.
Or if their brakes aren't going out, I wonder if they're just dead tired,
Their sleep. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Well,
know? And yeah.
well, it's a fascinating conversation that we had the other day, and I'm going to ask some of the questions I asked then because I want other people to hear the answers. But just like what 4 days ago here in town in Reno, I was driving with my family, and it's a truck that looked shady, didn't have the usual markings that I'm accustomed to seeing. Comes flying up behind it. I was trying to merge on. It's like 3 lanes in front of one of the major entrance exit points on Interstate 80. Comes flying up in the right lane, so I can't merge over. Rear like almost rear ends a car in front of me. Brake lights go on. I move behind it. I see this guy drop, low gear, pass a car, cut off another car, moves into the exit lane to go onto the interchange to go south or north or whatever. Switches lanes again. I was like, this guy might be one of those dudes that Adam was talking about, and it was totally inappropriate for the circumstances at the time when we're all going, 45 miles an hour because it's just a congested area. Dude did not care and was just swerving in. I almost called it in, but he went a different way than I went. And I was like, I can't track this truck, and I didn't get the tags in time. But it was enough to raise my eyebrows because I don't see that often, and I'm on the highway, or I used to be on the highway quite a lot, and I've seen a lot of trucks in Northern Nevada between, the Bay Area where they're shipping east and east shipping west. Like I see trucks all the time and I've never seen behavior like this. I was like, this is probably one of those good dudes Adam was talking about. So there have been some collisions, there have been some deaths to innocent people, likely because of this negligence. But I want to go back to the CDL schools because I'm a I fancy myself as a seminal document geek. I love codes and bylaws and laws and structure and regulations and I love seeing things in print because that's how we hold people accountable. If it's in
Mhm.
print, you don't get to debate it. There's a process for changing the things in print, but they're in print. So if you got CDL schools that are opening and they're fly-by-night operations, that would be very akin to somebody in my profession opening up just a graduate program that's non-accredited. Now, I bang on accreditation all the time, but it's there for a reason. It serves a purpose. Okay, fine. There's a there's a pathway that starts from school. We'll just call it school. School is accredited by someone. Usually it's a an enterprise that is vetted by many industries, if not government itself. And we can reasonably assure that through the accreditation process, the school that produces the student who graduates, the graduate of the program, has bare minimum competence in whatever field it may be. And there's accrediting bodies for all sorts of things. We think college accreditation, but then there's also program accreditation. And usually industries won't hire somebody who's not accredited some way or shape or form. Jake can't just go open up Jake's University and produce therapists because the licensing board won't license them if they're not accredited. Now, if my curricula are such that they align with Nevada law, the board can take that into consideration. That's fine. Maybe I do it really well at Jake's University or whatever, and people can get licenses. But that means the state, in this case, Nevada, the government, is looking at the coursework and saying, it's good enough. You don't have to have KCRAP or COAFD accreditation per se, but you met all the requirements and we believe that Jake is teaching you properly. Okay, fine. Somewhere along the way, this breaks down in this particular scenario because someone is not holding the CDL schools accountable. And I would assume that would be the departments of motor vehicles across the country. Why why can't we just nip this in the bud there and say, we're not giving you a driver's license with the CDL stamp unless you come from this set of schools? And I understand there's problems with that. I'm not a big fan of the guild, stranglehold on things, but it does serve at least a visual measurement of competence, whereas this is just it sounds like a free for all. How is this happening? How are the states with their departments of motor vehicles issuing licenses without proper schooling?
Well, um,
Or is the
this
mob that
this
deep?
well, um, this is one of those areas where when you set narratives, like because
Yeah,
you
we
have
need
two,
truckers. Get them through,
yeah,
get them through. Yeah.
right. So you have the two narratives. You have we need truckers, but also keep in mind COVID, right? So everyone was worried about shipping goods when everything is closed down. And so there was an influx. I even know someone in my life who got into trucking. I think it was towards the tail end of COVID, but there was a massive influx. Why? Because of that narrative and because everyone was saying you should get into trucking because it's needed. But it wasn't just us. It wasn't just the American who was getting into it. Everyone saw the flaw. So when you open up the pathway, because you have to understand the reason why this narrative matters. It's not like, oh, we read online that there's a trucker shortage, and so blah, blah, blah. This is coming from the top. This
Yeah,
is
it
coming
becomes
from,
unquestionable.
right. This is coming from top lobbyists into the government. Even the marriage between FMCSA and what's the name of the shoot? I forgot there's the top trucking lobbying group in
It's an
DC. But
association,
there's
I'm guessing. Yeah.
yeah, but there's a lot of marriage between the two as far as members of the FMCSA who came from that truck. So it goes back and forth. Um, but it's always this set narrative. And then when politicians get involved, guess who they're going to listen to,
Yeah,
right?
the
They're going to
lobbyists.
listen to
Yeah.
the lobbyists. They're going to listen to the FMCSA. There's a trucker shortage, trucker shortage. So they're going to do everything possible, especially during COVID when everyone's freaking hypochondriac about everything. And so they just open the floodgates and they think that they're massively deregulating, which you hear some people deregulate, deregulate. It's like, no, some regulation is good.
Yeah.
Something, having some hurdles is good because it keeps from other things. So there's a massive overcorrection that took place, I would say, during that time, because they presumed that we were going down a path where no one's going to be able to get any goods. And there's going to be massive supply chain disruptions because there's just not enough bodies getting behind the wheel. And that wasn't going to be the case, in my opinion, and that wasn't the case. And it actually created the opposite. It was the perfect storm. Granted, from my understanding, just talking to different experts, were there illegal immigrants in trucking prior? Probably, yes. I would say yes. I don't think all of this started during COVID. But it massively accelerated because of these changes. And just like any scam, like the PPP loan scam, you can go all over
Yeah.
the country and find people who did the same exact stuff. One person's in Atlanta, another person's in Detroit, another person's in LA, and they did the same exact play because that's what they figured it out and they told other people and everyone figured out what to do and they shared that information and they just did that. They found a vulnerability. You can get some free cash and just they did that. It's the same thing with trucking. No matter where I look, it's the same type of play. It's the same setup. It's the same everything. They all do the same thing. Um, but yeah, as far as like accreditation, you know, I think that's incredibly important. Um, and I think Sean Duffy is attacking, to be honest with you, and just so people know, for the documentary, I may be able to get a chance. I've been talking to his communications team, so I may actually get a chance to
This is
sit
our
down and interview
transportation
him.
secretary, right?
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah,
yes,
and Adam's doing a documentary on this, so if you're paying attention, you can see that when it's produced, and he's
yeah,
fundraising. So if you want to throw a few bucks his way, please do that.
yes. Um, but I will give Sean Duffy credit. He is saying he's using the same language that the truckers are using, which
Hmm.
is different, right? It's different than even the truckers. Like I went to a trucker show in Kentucky, and he was a rock star. All of a sudden, all the truckers were surrounding the stage to listen to him speak. Didn't cut him off or anything. I was talking to another trucking guy who's the year prior. They booed the FMCSA off the stage.
Oh,
So these aren't, nice and polite guys. If they feel like you're full of it, they're gonna boo you off the stage because you're feeding them horse crap because they're on the road and they're seeing all this stuff. Sean Duffy gets on stage and says, "I see what you're doing. I see what's going on, and here's what I'm doing, and here's what I've done so far, and there's more to come." And they're like, "Finally, thank you." These are guys who've been waiting like a decade plus for someone to listen to what's actually going on. Um, so I will give massive credit to Sean Duffy because he is going after CDL mills. Just yesterday, he pulled the federal funding for New York because of they were supplying a ton of non-domicile CDLs past the point of the people's visas, past the point of when they were allowed to stay in the country. So I think New York is the only state or one of the only states. If you are here on a green card or something like that, and you get a license, it says how long you're in the country for
oh, on the license.
on the license. So imagine like I'm only in the country here till 2028, where they were issuing licenses that were going 2 years prior, 3 years prior. It's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing that? And so they were setting up an environment where these guys could just keep driving and keep driving these trucks. So, and we can talk about non-domicile CDLs, but what Sean Duffy is trying to do is to end the abuse on non-domicile CDLs. And if you want, I can explain as to why that was the avenue of choice for CDLs.
Yeah, go. Let's get into it because I got more questions about why it's even like feasible or viable financially and where the money goes and all this stuff. So yeah, let's take some
Yeah.
time and dive into it. It's worth it.
So with non-domicile CDLs, what does that mean? How it traditionally meant. One of the experts that I've been talking to, his name is Justin Martin. Justin Martin was like, I had a non-domicile CDL. And he explained to me in his circumstance, he's like, I lived in this state, but I went to a CDL school in a different state. And I stayed at a hotel until I finished my CDL training in that state. I finished, I went to the DMV in that state. I'm not a resident in that state. So they can't give me a CDL for that state, but they can give me a non-domicile CDL so I can take that to my home state and get my actual CDL.
Okay, okay, okay.
So that was the purpose of it. Where they abused it, there was because everything is about language. You were talking about all this different paperwork and language. It was the word foreign. So it wasn't that you're foreign to this country, it's that you're foreign to where you actually live. And so what they did was abuse that element of being foreign. And they just started issuing all these different non-domicile CDLs and allowing that to take place. So that's why non-domicile CDLs are like that's the talking point that everyone is going after because it was massively abused. So, not that it shouldn't exist. Maybe it needs to be reformed, or maybe it needs to just be killed altogether, and they just need to find out some other process for the scenario that we said before. But that's why they're going after it, and that's why it was abused.
So this would be akin to license reciprocity. If I have a license to practice marriage and family therapy in Nevada, I can go apply in New York, and New York will give me a license because all 50 states plus DC have license reciprocity pathways. Some of them
Mhm.
are slightly different, but they essentially say if you're good somewhere, you're good here. We have issues in our profession with quote unquote practicing across state lines, and I'm not going to get into that because that's a different topic. But where we go wrong is we don't have a set national standard. I won't say federal because federal sounds like the government. We don't have a set national standard. Nurses have a set national standard, and you can be a nurse anywhere because there's a national standard for that. In my profession, states get very um, shall we say, uppity over who's got the better standard. And it's like, we're all just doing talk therapy. There really isn't much. Like there might be some very slight differences in mandatory reporting laws between Nevada and Texas. I don't know. But
Right.
in driving, the laws are uniform. And that's why English matters because all the signs on the road are in English, and all the
Exactly.
law enforcement entities speak English. So that's a it's a basic fundamental understanding of communication and navigation, if you will, too. So I could see how this would be problematic. I don't understand why such a thing would even exist. If you get I mean, if I graduate from an accredited school in North Carolina, I can get a license pretty much anywhere I apply, so long as my coursework is in alignment with that state. It sounds like this was some sort of sleight of hand or shell game that was going on, and now we've conflated the word foreign to mean foreign from the country as as well as foreign from the state in which you're applying for the driver's license. So this is
Exactly.
this is all lining up. I think it's disgusting, but it makes sense now. Okay, onward.
Yeah. Actually, I want to you said you had some questions.
Yeah.
I
So
want to answer them.
all right. So in my mind, I'm analogizing this to business that I'm familiar with, and I don't necessarily know how trucking goes, although I am familiar enough with it to make some educated guesses. All right, let's say you got a manufacturer of widgets in China, and China ships, and then you got shippers who charge to ship the widgets. And then you've got dock workers who charge to unload the shipping containers. And then you have truckers who charge to ship the containers in trucks. And then you have drivers who have to get paid. And then you finally make it to maybe the warehouse that charges to store the stuff. And then more trucks to take from the warehouse to the stores. And then the stores charge to retail the thing. So that's where our costs go. So it's always cheaper to manufacture than it is to sell because everybody along the way who's responsible for transporting this thing has to get paid somehow.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out how an indentured servant who's getting paid below market wages finds that financially viable when the top people, the maybe the shippers, the manufacturers probably don't even care or know whether they're in China or Nebraska, it doesn't matter. The shippers are skimming. The trucking companies, and I'll put that in air quotes for the listening audience, the companies, because they're all fraudulent as well as far as I'm concerned, the way that you're describing this. They're skimming, so they're not paying their fair share downstream to the actual individuals who's driving the truck. How does the
Mhm.
individual who's driving the truck at below market wage, and I don't know what that is. Maybe it's per mile or per hour or something, but it's less than a normal trucker makes. And normal truckers aren't exactly living high on the hog, the last I checked. How are
Right.
these guys making it, if they even are making it? Why is this even worthwhile to come from a foreign country here to live in squalor or in the cab of a truck for months or years on end, when presumably they're probably also sending a lot of it back home to their families? How is this even worth it? Is it just an exercise of nobility? They're really trying to get their families out of whatever situation they're in back home, and they're just taking it on the chin, or is this actually profitable somehow?
The only people that it's profitable for is everyone else except for the person driving the truck in that scenario.
Then why do it?
It,
I don't understand that.
so think of it like this. You are, I'm just going to use India as an example. You live in northern India. You don't make a lot of money, right? Um, you're poor, just like everybody else is poor.
Mm.
And then you go on TikTok and they say, come here to America. You make a whole bunch of money, a flash of money, drive a truck, right?
So
And
they get lied to,
yeah, exactly.
and then they're here, and
Many
then they're
of
trapped.
they're trapped. Many of them sell stuff because they have to get smuggled in, so they have to pay for that. So they might sell stuff. They actually have stuff called like travel agents. They work with agencies to get to the United States. Usually it's via, well, sometimes it's via Mexico, or sometimes they do like the death route where they have to go through shoot, what is it called? The pathway basically between South America and
Oh yeah, the
the Darien
yes,
Gap.
Darien Gap.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is insane. I don't know any of these guys. Every time I look up stuff about Darien Gap, they're like it's like the most dangerous
Yeah.
like place to like no one can make it through. I mean, obviously people make it through, but it's extremely dangerous to go through. Um, but anyways, they might sell stuff. They may take loans from loan sharks, maybe even a circumstance where they get connected with a trucking company. And they basically become indebted to them. So the reason why a lot of these guys are driving so much is because they're in debt.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
or the mob's holding a gun to their family's head back home or something like that.
I've heard of circumstances like that where the family is actually in the States too, but they're sort of held hostage and sort of not. Wink, wink,
Yeah,
nod,
yeah,
nod.
cartel does that with drugs, from my understanding.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot. That's why I try to tell people this isn't Jose is just looking for an opportunity for a better life. Many of these guys are being tricked and trapped. Many of them have a debt gun to their head. Um, when it comes to this stuff, that's why I think it's appropriate to say indentured servitude because they get no rest. We can actually talk about, and you've probably seen some stuff about this. It's becoming a really big problem with cargo theft.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that. Are they stealing their own shipments and then claiming middle of the night theft when really it was just their buddy and they're all doing it to each other? That's what I imagine.
There's, and I've talked to people. I actually talked to this one guy who owns a trucking company and had his cargo stolen. And there's different ways that they're doing it. Some are more sophisticated than you might actually think. It's what's a way to, the best way I can kind of explain it is you are waiting for a shipment. You know the exact shipment that you're waiting for and what to get. And everything is electronic these days,
Yeah, all of a
right? So you
sudden it's
might,
delayed. The baseballs I
well,
ordered from Amazon were supposed to arrive 2 weeks ago. Sorry, your shipment is delayed. Like, why is that? There's been no weather. Yeah, got stolen.
yeah. Well, we'll say in this case, when I say your shipment, I mean like you're the trucking company,
I'm the
right?
trucker. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you're the trucking company. You bid it on a load. You got the load. You're about to send the driver to go get it, right? Well, what has happened is hacking. There have
Mm.
been situations because they're bidding for stuff through a system,
And they
right?
know
You have a
what's on the
login,
truck.
and they know what's on the truck, and they know all this stuff. But beyond that, actually, it's a little bit slicker and less dangerous. If they can get access to your account and they can see what load you won, then what they'll do is they'll go there before you and say, "Hey, I'm here to pick up the shipment." And the warehouses aren't necessarily checking. They're like, "Oh, you're here to pick up shipment, blah, 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 blah." They load up your truck, you're gone, and
Right,
then
because who
your
lies
actual
about that,
truck.
right? Like, unless you have advanced knowledge. Yeah, wow.
Exactly. And so you show up and they have no shipment, like you just took it. That wasn't me. And so it becomes an insurance write-off, and obviously you lose out on money because someone took the load. So there's different circumstances. It's become more sophisticated. Years ago, it would have been you stopped at a rest stop, someone stole your truck, or someone broke into the back of your truck. They don't need to do that anymore. They can just hack your account, and we have foreign hackers who hack trucking business accounts who get in and look at all your details and look at your shipment loads, and they'll go and intercept your load.
Where's that stuff end up on eBay? And then
Good
somebody's making money
question.
off that? And
Probably. Um, I'm assuming it ends up in the hands of the typical black market. Um, actually, damn, I'm trying to remember what it was because Tucker Carlson had a shipment of stuff that was stolen, but I don't think it was his. There was a shipment of something that was I can't remember what it was. It might have been
it
vape
was the
pens
Kit
or
Kats in
something.
Europe.
It might have been like vape pens or something like that. But there was like footage of the person trying to go to like different warehouses saying, "Hey, I have a shipment. Do you want to buy the shipment?" Trying to sell it to different warehouse locations and stuff like that. So I'm sure there's different ways that they find ways to get rid of it, to get rid of these loads. But some of these loads are upwards of $1 million worth of, product. Um,
Yeah,
so
all I can think of is Eddie Murphy hanging off the back of the truck in Beverly Hills Cop when they're stealing the cigarettes. It's like it's not unlike that.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And actually, I think what could actually help you because you were trying to break down like the manufacturer and the shipper. I actually have a better breakdown to explain for you in the audience
Okay.
because a lot of people have zero idea like how this stuff works. Is like they show up somewhere and it ends up on a truck and it ends up, I don't know, at Lowe's or something.
Yeah.
Um, so here are the primary parts. You have the shipper. So let's say Amazon, right? Amazon has products, they want to ship it to wherever they want to ship it to. So Amazon's the shipper. These days, you have more and more brokers. Brokers aren't necessarily a necessity, but they have become more and more in fashion. And actually, brokers are facilitating a lot of this illegal labor, shady companies. And I'll
The
explain.
the broker connects the shipper with the driver or the trucking company.
Exactly. They're
Okay.
the middleman. So you have the broker, and then from there, then you have the carrier. We call them carriers, but the trucking company, right? So ABC Trucking. ABC Trucking hires Bob to drive the truck, so that's the next person that's in line. And Bob drives the truck, he's the trucker. So what's happening in the cases, we'll say like in the illegal situation. And by the way, Amazon's the worst when it comes to how many of their drivers who drive their goods don't speak English. Like it's not even
You know,
close.
it's crazy because literally in one breath, I thought Amazon probably has a vested interest to make sure that this stuff is on the up and up. And then I thought, no, they don't, because they're making money if they can save it by hiring people who aren't fit. I mean, wow,
Yes.
I just caught myself
Yes.
right there.
So yeah, we'll go back to this equation. I'll explain like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how all this stuff works. So Amazon has shipments that they want to ship. So in many cases, Amazon, because it's a behemoth, it's also going to use brokers. Brokers are going to set up an environment where they have like almost, you can say clientele or just whatever, but they have a pool of trucking companies. And they say, hey, I got a shipment that's going to New York. And those different trucking companies are all going to bid. They all bid in the system. And so in many ways, it's just numbers, right? You say, all right, I'll deliver it for $1,000. Next person says, I'll do it for 900. And whoever is the lowest bidder gets the shipment. That's all the broker really cares about. And that is problematic in many ways.
Because they take their cut no
So
matter what, and at
they take their
scale,
cut,
they're always making money.
bingo, right? So the broker finds ABC Trucking that says, screw those guys, I'll do it for 500. Everyone else is like, I don't understand how anybody could do it for less than my amount because I have to pay for gas, for maintenance, and I got to pay this guy to drive the truck, right? So I have a whole bunch of costs associated. I literally won't make any money doing it less. For these guys, the shady operators, they'll make money because one, they don't pay taxes because they're shady operators.
Okay.
Two, they're paying illegal, and that guy, and they're paying him as a contractor. Um, so they're not paying any taxes on the employee, so they don't have employee taxes. They have them in old trucks, old fallen apart trucks,
No maintenance.
right? No maintenance. They don't take care of the maintenance, right? They just have these guys ride till the wheels run off. And if they're leasing it, because they're old trucks, the lease isn't that expensive,
Right.
right? So all in all, the people who make the most money are going to be everyone else except for the illegal immigrant driving that truck. The illegal immigrant, he may make some money, but remember, because this is where the shady trucking companies double dip in many ways, because that guy driving the truck is paying them to drive the truck.
Right, right, right. Because it's extortive. Yeah. Yeah. He's got to pay
So,
off the debt to get him into the country.
yes, yes.
Wow.
And at the very least, let's say he sold his house in India and he came here and he has no debt for being trafficked in. He still has to pay to drive that truck.
Correct. Correct. Uh,
So,
man.
yeah.
No, it's crazy. Um, okay. So this is mind bending on many levels. One of the
I
questions I
told you it
asked,
keeps getting
yeah,
worse.
yeah. One of the questions if I remember asking you is, why, why can't we stop this, right? And you told some stories about how they just pop up as soon as they're extinguished because law enforcement can't keep up, because the
Yes.
criminals are always more nimble. I'd like for you to give the anecdote that you shared with me, and I don't even know if you remember it because I don't know if it matters because there's a zillion of them, about
Mhm.
where they caught a ring in, I don't know, Youngstown or somewhere, and then like the next day it was right back up in the same apartment complex or whatever it was. Do you remember that?
I don't remember I don't remember an analogy or a situation, but I can easily explain
Yeah,
how it
just use
works.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll go back. We remember the equation of shipper, broker, carrier, trucker. So we'll go to the carrier. The reason we call them shady carriers or shady operators, that's
This
another
is
name
also
they
the
might
same as
call.
a trucking company, right? In air quotes, trucking
Yeah,
company is carrier
trucking
is
company.
operator. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So they go by different names. But we'll go to the carrier level. When they did a lot of deregulation, um, and they set up these different rules, they actually thought that they were setting up an environment where they were going to be wary of the bigger trucking companies. So like a JB Hunt
Yeah,
and
R and
those
L or
guys.
whatever. Yeah.
Right. They thought they were actually more worried about JB Hunt and these particular companies. But they didn't realize that actually the problem was going to be on the other side, the smaller companies, the smaller operators. And so what happens is, actually, I'll say it from the very beginning. How do you start a trucking company? Um, Basically, you have to get an authority from the FMCSA. Doesn't take a whole lot. Um, you have to show like what truck you have. You have to have insurance, right? There's some bare minimum things that you have to do. Let's say you meet all those things, and it doesn't take very long. You send that information over to the FMCSA. You can get the authority to drive a truck in about 24 hours, which means you can go get a load and start hauling goods.
Because I don't need a CDL to buy a truck and form a business, right?
Correct.
Jake could go out and form Jake's Trucking. Now this is sounding good. I've got a mental health company. I've got a university. I've got a trucking company. So I'm creating an empire.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go to music next. Yeah, so Jake sets up Jake's trucking company out of my garage, right, or whatever, and I have a truck that I bought somewhere that's used and probably not in great shape. I file all the proper paperwork with State of Nevada, City of Sparks, whatever, and I submit that to the FMCA, FMCA, right? FMCSA.
FMCSA.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they don't know any different. They just know that I've checked the boxes and they go, yep, looks good to us. And then I go out and I can
Yeah.
contract you as my driver. Okay.
Yep. Exactly. So with the FMCSA, here's what's supposed to happen. What's supposed to happen is you file, because remember, we have a trucker shortage, so they don't want to do anything
Oh,
to
yes, yes.
interrupt. goods being shipped around the country. So they're not necessarily rubber stamping. It's kind of like a Boy Scout system where they do like minimal checks and then you're good to go. So the biggest thing is insurance. As long as it appears that your insurance is valid, you're pretty much set through and you filled out all this other information, you're on your
Oh,
way.
Jake also owns an insurance company, doesn't he?
Well, that's a whole other thing. Um, It's more like Jake has a connect who may give him fraudulent information to make it appear like he
Aha.
has insurance. That does happen, but there's other games that they do where they get insurance, but they don't pay for the insurance and they wait till the insurance runs out
Lapses.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
lapse it and yeah, and they just cycle it all over
Another
again.
shell
So
game. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but in this case, you actually have insurance and you get the authority, you can start hauling goods. What's supposed to happen is the FMCSA yeah, it's supposed to inspect your company within a year. The problem is when you flooded the entire system with a ton of small carriers, they don't have the manpower. FMCSA's budget doesn't compare to the FAA. They just don't have the manpower. So that turns into one expert was telling me about 5% of trucking companies actually get inspected
Wow.
within the first year. They actually get
And
inspected.
that's if I last a year, right? I might not I might just be in business for 9 or 10 months and then fold up shop and recreate the same thing over under one letter different in my acronym.
Well, here's what happens when it comes to these shady operators, and they all basically do this. You start ABC Trucking, but then at the same address, you also start John's Trucking.
Right.
And you might even start Ron's Trucking too, all with different names as the owner of the company, right? One is your mom, one's your sister,
Yep.
one's you, right? And so, but they're all at the same address. And so let's say the FMCSA does come to inspect and knock on your door about ABC Trucking. Well, you clearly don't meet the standard, right? Because you're in an apartment building. And
Mhm.
you don't have any records. You're not conducting all the minimal standards because there's a lot of regulations in trucking. You're not doing any of that stuff, and they can't inspect. If they can't inspect you, then they shut down your trucking company. But but that is not a problem to you because you got two more to go.
Yep. Yep. And you just change your drivers over to them.
Right. And so you're constantly swapping between the companies. So if your one trucking company has a terrible record, getting crashes, failed inspections and stuff like that, and people are just like, I'm not giving you any loads. Well, you just move over to John's Trucking, right? And you just start the whole process over again. And then you just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. So they're just
Listening
taking
audience not
advantage
on
of.
video can't, yeah, yeah, can't see me exasperating. But this is very reminiscent of what I encountered circa 2015 to 2019-ish in my own field here in Nevada, where there were these fraudsters fraudulently billing Medicaid. And some of the owners of the businesses would do exactly that. They'd split off, they'd get the wife, they'd create a new NPI. NPI is called a National Provider Index, National Provider Identifier number. We all have one. It's like a Social Security number, but you can fraudulently go into the system. And one guy I know who's on the Medicaid exclusion list, he's now a pastor in Florida. He was a licensee. His John Phipps, John Weston Phipps, John W. Phipps, Dina Phipps, his wife, four different companies all perpetrating fraud. And just as Medicaid, the state of Nevada, started turning up the heat, he sold the companies to people he misrepresented to, and other people were left holding the bag, and he skated. And so you can't necessarily imprison trucking company owners for regulatory violations because it's not it's an administrative crime. You need somebody to prosecute that. You'd have to allege harm or foul, to get him on a criminal charge instead of just an administrative charge. So there's really no way to throw Jake in this instance in jail and shut down all three of his operations. You just keep chasing the trail. That's crazy. Meanwhile,
and
people
and
are getting
the
hurt, and this is really the problem, right? Like human
yeah.
beings are getting hurt. Say what you want about whether or not these illegal immigrants should have been here and whether or not they, whatever, right? They're human beings. They're being abused. They're being exploited. That's not right. That's fundamentally, it's Luciferian. It's satanic, I think, as far as I'm concerned. Um, but let's pretend you don't care about those people, right? We'll put those people in quotes, the foreigners, right? Let's pretend you don't care about them. Real Americans are being hurt too. If American is all you care about, right? And Americans are the only humans on the planet, um, people are dying because they're getting run over or run off the road by these trucks that are not maintained. Guys who are, doing speed just to stay awake. Um, Not to mention the cost of your goods are probably escalating with every insurance claim. It's impossible for your friends and neighbors who want to do it legitimately to get jobs and to deliver your goods safely. What are some of the other things I'm missing here on the real like real practical downstream consequences that are really unpleasant? And to be clear, I do care about human beings, and I do find it really sad that people get bilked into b believing that they're gonna, arrive in the land of milk and honey only to find scorpions and cyanide.
Yeah. I think I think you nailed it as far as who are being affected. You have you have the motorist who's being hurt, whether it's in a crash. Um, well, usually, I mean, they're usually being hurt because of a crash, whether they survive the crash or not. Um, you have the family members who have to deal with another family member who's being hurt or killed. Um, you have, I talked to a former trucking company owner who said one of the saddest days for him was when he had to close up shop.
Can't
He
compete.
just can't compete. And he had employed really good truckers, long-standing truckers, reliable guys, no accidents, like, and those are hard to find, right? Because there's a
Hmm.
lot of turnover. And there's something about being, there's something about being a business owner. We're able to help other people put food on the table.
Yeah.
And he lost that ability because there's an unfair market at hand. And so, that's something that really sticks with them. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people are aware. Um, a lot of owner operators leave. I know someone who left because it wasn't that profitable anymore. And granted, people recognize that the trucking industry is sort of cyclical. Like it has its booms and busts, right? But we're not talking about a boom and bust. When you have trucking companies that have been around for 25, 30, 40 years going under, that should tell you something, right? These are companies that have stood in the test of time. They're ready for the booms and busts.
Yeah.
And they go under, something's wrong. And what's wrong is that there's an element of using incredibly cheap labor, undercutting everything, and illegal activity that is happening. And so what we have is essentially a two-tier system. We have the tier that is doing everything right, because if you do everything right, you have a lot of costs, you have a lot of regulations, there's a lot of liability, you have all these things if you're doing it right in trucking. But you're also competing against the people who are not doing any of it right. And they make a hell of a lot more money,
Healthcare too, as it turns out.
healthcare as
Yeah.
well. So, I mean, you have a two-tier system. What's ultimately going to happen? The people who are doing it right can't last as long. And so they're going to dwindle. So you're going to have a corrupt market. And the people who are going to stay in it are staying in it, hoping and praying that someone comes in to help them, or they're staying in it because that's all they know how to do. If you've been driving trucks for 20 years, like this, I'm a
Yeah, you're not going
trucker,
back to school to do nursing. Yeah.
right? And so this is the unfair environment that has been set up, much of due to government negligence.
Yeah.
Um, and so when I rail against illegal immigration, it is not to be xenophobic or anything like that. I recognize that it's unfair for everyone involved, right? It's unfair for the guy who's coming from India, who's coming from South America to come here and drive a truck for 28 out of 30 days a week
Yeah.
for 18 to 20 hours a day. Like it is unfair for that guy to be set up in that situation. And nor do I think that he knew that he was going to be doing that in the first place.
Right. How does
Um, yeah.
how does it not make it back by now? I mean, this has been going on for long enough. Why aren't these folks reporting back to their homeland via TikTok where they first found it to begin with and say, "Don't fall for the trap"? You know, like why isn't that happening?
So I think there might be a couple logical reasons. One, if you're the guy coming here as an illegal immigrant, how much voice do you have in the first place? You're
Yeah,
usually
I can
poor.
understand self-censorship and not wanting to put yourself out there because you might get your head lopped off. I can appreciate that.
Well, you may not have much influence. You're just some guy,
Yeah,
you
dropping
know?
an ocean too. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So there is that element. There also is, because remember, this isn't you just end up with some random company. This is an ethnic enclave. So they're
Right,
bringing
right,
people of their own clan, their own ethnic tribes to come here. So when that happens, you become very reluctant to say anything to
right, right,
anybody.
right.
I've heard of situations, without giving too much information, where the guys who are here know, but they're afraid to talk because they know what might come if they say stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of fear associated with all this stuff. Because once again, we're not dealing with um, some random Indian guy who just happens to hire another Indian guy who's illegal. We're dealing with organized
Organized
crime.
crime. Yep. Yeah, you're not just going to lose your job, you're going to lose your family and your life and yeah, that's really sad.
Yeah,
It's almost like we need to I don't know what the solution is. I don't
I
know
know
what
what
the
the solution
solution is.
is.
What is it? More
All right,
podcasts.
so more podcasts, yes. So I think there's three main solutions, and I would love to talk to Sean Duffy about these things. Um, and not everything Sean Duffy can do. So I'll preface by saying that. One, they have to get rid of the Boy Scout system. Just because you apply for a trucking company doesn't mean that you get it in 24 hours. We should inspect first. It made sense when we had a high trust system. We don't have a high trust system anymore, right? All the truckers I talked to who've been in it for a long time, they would tell me, trucking used to be about relationships. I don't know you. I'm not working with you, right? It's like anything else. I'm going to work with people that I know or that know who you are, right? But when you're fresh, it's hard to get work. And maybe that's a good thing because we weed out the scammers because there's a
Yeah.
lot of scamming and stuff too.
Yeah.
Um, that we didn't even really touch on that, but there's a lot of trucking scams that are going on as well. Um,
What might one of those
so
look like? What's a trucking scam look like?
where they pretend to have a, where they pretend to take a load or they impersonate companies,
Uh,
um, you know, where they sort of bid on a load, but they're not a real company. Like
then they
there's
just
a lot
steal it.
of, yeah, they steal it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of weird. I had a conversation with this broker, and he's a good broker, and he's telling me it's really hard to be a good broker because you have to vet a lot of stuff and you have to ask a lot of questions, um, and it's a lot harder than you know. And so, by the way, some of the shady brokers are actually incredibly large, multi-billion-dollar companies.
Oh, yeah. So it this isn't just fire hosing a handful of small companies while risking organized crime coming at you, while also threatening the existence of the illegal immigrants themselves in the country is you're up against money, big money,
Big money.
and reach. Yeah. Hmm.
Big money. To give you an example, I'll use their name because there's currently a Supreme Court case that is pending. Um, Basically, the situation, I might mess up the details a little bit. Someone was injured by a truck. Um, some bystander who's driving a car was injured by a trucker. the person who is injured is trying to sue the broker. There might be stuff about the truck. I can't remember the trucking company, what was wrong with them. They may have had like a bad score and just a bad history. But they were given a load through the broker. So they're trying to sue the broker for saying that you were negligent in your job in vetting who you were giving that load to. So the reason why the Supreme Court case is actually important is because there's arguments that if it goes a particular way, that the brokers will have immunity.
Uh,
And
what's the
so,
what's the constitutional basis of the suit?
I mean, it's just like anything else where they're trying to figure out because this is the problem that I see when it comes to trucking. I mean, it is what it is, but everyone pretends that they don't know what's going on, and there's a lot of hands in the pot.
We're just looking for accountability then.
Right. We're talking about
Okay.
accountability. And I've had conversations with trucking experts, and they all affirm essentially what I'm about to say. They don't ask any questions because they don't want to know, because they don't want to be reliable. So if I'm a broker, I'm not going to ask you, are you hiring illegals? I'm not going to ask you who your driver is, because then now I take on a level of responsibility that I didn't want. And so
Okay.
if your guy goes and crashes, now I could potentially be on the hook.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so everyone is playing like their eyes are closed, but everybody knows what's going on, you know? So the shippers don't ask questions, the brokers don't ask questions, the carriers are shady. They know what's going on, and they know that no one's going to ask them questions. So they do whatever they want. As long as they keep underbidding and give them the cheapest, they'll keep getting loads.
That's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy because like we used to say, well, you know, you don't want to support the shady businesses, just buy American. Right? Like I don't want to support slave labor in China making my tennis shoes. I just won't buy Chinese tennis shoes. It's like, well, not true anymore because now it's here. And you know, I can already hear the complaints about, oh, this is capitalism run amok. It's like, no, it's not because we actually have regulatory authority in place that's insufficient. And more regulation isn't the solution. It's enforce the regulations we do have, which I guess started at the border.
Yeah. Well, to go back to what's the solution? First solution is get rid of the Boy Scout system. We should
Yeah.
inspect before we give authorization. Um, two, get rid of the just a truck driver shortage narrative. On government level, industry level, get rid of that narrative. That's not the case. Because we actually don't. We legitimately don't have a truck driver issue. We're complaining about illegal immigrants in trucking.
Yeah, yeah,
We
you're
have
right,
plenty
right.
of them.
Yeah.
We have plenty of truckers. Um, so there is that. You have to essentially enforce all these different laws that are going on. The FMCSA needs to be funded so they can enforce their regulations and to actually shut them down. But personally, I think the first solution of getting rid of the Boy Scout system is the equivalent of shutting down the southern border. Because you can deport a bunch of people, right?
Let's
But if
come
the
back
southern
through.
border is open, they're just going to come back through. By getting rid of the Boy Scout system, you stop the floodgates because the you can shut down the FMCSA can go out and inspect. We can hire a ton of inspectors and they go out and inspect and they shut down your company. Well, guess what? 2 days later, or actually probably already by then, they already have a second company. So they don't care about you shutting them down. So they have to end that. They need to modernize their system because it's severely outdated. If you were to go to their website now, it looks like it was made when GeoCities was around. Like
Jeez.
it's just bad.
There's a
Um,
Windows 98 machine running it somewhere.
Right. No, it's probably older than that. It's probably
Windows
there's probably
3.1.
some there's probably some DOS machine
It's a
that's that
monochromatic green screen.
yeah, someone's like, whatever you do, do not turn it off. Why? Because we don't know if he'll come back on.
There's floppy disks.
Yes, exactly. I wish we were joking, but
Yeah,
when Elon brought in Doge,
I
he had
know.
some stories.
Yeah, that was that facility that was in the old mine with all the files stacked up and the yeah.
Like, what? But yeah, I think that in my head, how I see this, that is like that's how you stop the floodgate. You in that
Mhm.
process is like, thanks for applying. We'll contact you after we inspect or
Yep.
when we're ready to inspect. So that's how you stop the floodgate. Um, there's been conversations about the DOT having almost like a police force, um,
Instead
where
of
they
relying
have
on the local highway
or relying
patrols.
on the FBI or relying on
Oh yeah.
DHS. Because here's the problem. The problem, people used to say, like, well, why do we have all these different agencies? Why can't the FBI just handle everything? Because they all have different priorities. Like the FBI, if there's a terrorist act, the FBI is there, right? I've literally talked to a business owner who has contact with the FBI. He's like, I tracked my load. It's over here. Like, I know who took it. I got the guy's number. And they're like, I don't know, because it's not sexy. It's not their priority. Like, who does that guy go to stop the people who are stealing their stuff, to actually arrest them? Now, if you say I have human trafficking, well, oh, we're right there.
Yeah.
Then suddenly we get all these different agencies. So there needs to be some sort of enforcement arm that exists. I don't know how big it needs to be, but it needs to be some sort of enforcement arm that actually investigates these things and can arrest people because there are arrestable things that are happening within trucking. So it's not all administrative. Like, I'm not saying that we should arrest someone who creates two businesses out of the same apartment, right? But what I'm saying is we should have elements that are investigating if there's money laundering happening, because I've seen cases like that. We need to have it. Are they part of trafficking? Are they stealing shipments? Because man, if people knew how many shipments are being stolen around this country, like they'd be astounded. But they don't know about it because it becomes an insurance write-off, and then everyone's wondering why their insurance is going up.
That, I couldn't
So
shake that. That's what kept going through my head is the property and casualty insurance is just climbing, climbing, climbing. And I go back to COVID, right, and the riots and peaceful protests, but mostly peaceful but fiery. Um, where the narrative became it's just stuff, let insurance handle it. It's like your premium is going to go up too. Wait, no. This is billions of dollars we're talking about. Who's covering that? You are, because they're just defraying the cost and, rippling it across you. It's a
yeah,
terrible strategy.
yeah, and we haven't even necessarily made the association when it comes to insurance. Obviously, property being stolen, but when you have this many unqualified people who don't speak the language, who shouldn't be driving on the roads, you have an excess number of potential accidents that are
Correct.
going to happen. So that's even more insurance for the people they're hitting, for the guys themselves in the truck, if they have insurance, like all it for the shipment, that's all messed up now because they got into an accident. Um, so there's all in health insurance too, because
Yep,
there are
because they're
people
going to the
being maimed
hospitals.
and killed. Like all these different things are
My
happening.
commercial vehicle insurance jumped almost 2.5x from one year to the next, and a lot of the insurance companies, again, they'll spread out the costs from major multi-billion-dollar natural disasters, hurricanes, stuff like that to the autos, but also the autos themselves getting more expensive and they're all rolling computers. But you don't think about trucks that are insured that collide too because there's irresponsibility going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
everything's getting more expensive.
And honestly, I think there needs to be some accountability when it comes to these insurance companies. We're always told like the insurance companies care most about liability. I don't see any other bigger liability than giving insurance policies to high risk
I
people.
don't think they care because they can just pass along their cost to the consumer. That's
Yeah.
it. They don't care. Why would they
Or
care? I don't see fewer Geico ads. You know what I mean? Like that Gecko's
yeah.
still on my screen. The All States, the State Farms, the USAAs. Like the advertising marketing budget for those things aren't shrinking. They're not ceasing to sponsor Stadia. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're doing just fine.
Yeah, they're doing just fine. But I do have questions that I won't be able to answer, but I do have questions where they come into play. And it's just really, from a public information standpoint, it's almost impossible to know because insurance companies are, and rightfully so, are extremely tight-lipped.
Yeah.
So you have no idea as to what their role is. Are there bad actors with insurance companies? Do they actually know what's going on? Are they caring to check or are they just caring to get another customer? Like we just don't know.
I don't think they care based on my understanding and experience with health, auto, home, general liability. I don't think they care because they can just ratchet the rate. I think by and large they're just run by psychopaths. And I don't mean the people answering the phone on your claim. I mean like the boards of directors and the investors. They don't care. They want money. More. How much more? More. More than what? More. Like they
Mhm.
don't care. I really don't think they care. They're isolated. They're in their buffered communities. They live behind gates, you know. So they think they're not affected because they can absorb the costs themselves. But that's
Yeah.
super cynical and nihilistic, but that's my reality check. Keeps me sane. I
If
like
I
your
can
solutions.
give, thank
Yeah, go
you.
ahead.
And I think there are other solutions too, but I think those are the key things. Um, for people to kind of understand, like, what's the scale of this? Because some of us have heard of these different trucking accidents and have found out the legal status of the drivers, right? And on the surface, if we were to zoom out, you're like, well, it doesn't seem like it's that many, right? Like we can name like maybe four or five, right? How many trucking accidents are there in
That you
general?
hear of.
Like, you know, exactly, that you hear of. Here's the problem, and this is where the kind of the politics come into place. And I've seen this with families that I've been interviewing for the documentary. Illegal immigration has become political, not just in the sense of whether you deport people or not, but it's whether you interfere in their lives at all, whether you give them any sort of punishment whatsoever. And so, in the cases that I'm dealing with in interviewing for this documentary, I'm dealing with people who get no justice whatsoever. So, I'll give you an example. I just interviewed Deanne Miller, who was out in Colorado. She lost her husband because a guy who's deported about 16 times was driving a truck. And by the way, he didn't have a non-domicile CDL. He had no CDL. He had nothing. So he's driving a truck in the mountains of Colorado, doesn't know how to drive in the mountains of Colorado. And as he's coming down and when I was in Colorado, I was on this particular road, so I got to see, it was shown where the accident happened. He's coming down this decline doing 85 miles an hour. Like he had no control. And so he completely wiped out. And there are several reasons as to why um, her husband was killed. And one of the reasons was legal immigrant driving a truck. He shouldn't have been driving a truck. Second thing is how they secured it. He was carrying pipes. These are like 500 to 1,000 pound pipes. And it was secured with straps. And it's not supposed to be secured with straps. It's supposed to be secured with chains. So as soon as the accident happened, the entire load just came off. And that when that load came off, it crushed her husband and he died instantly. And this man was in a F-350 or something like that, some sort of big Ford truck. And that amount of weight just crushed him and he was killed on the spot. The other reason why was that that load wasn't supposed to be on that type of truck. So he didn't even have the proper truck to carry that load. So you have, and there's a lawsuit that's going on with the shipper because the shipper is the one who secured the load onto the truck, and they actually supposedly have different inspection points before that load leaves their yard. So there's a lawsuit that's going on trying to hold the shipper responsible. But where's the justice? So this guy gets arrested. They were initially going to charge him with vehicular manslaughter.
That's crazy. He survived, huh?
Yeah, he survived. He was fine. One person died. There were other people that are injured. One woman has permanent brain damage. Um, even though she survived. I I was gonna see if I could talk to her, but it's still too traumatic. It happened 2 years ago. Um, so he gets arrested. They're gonna go for vehicular manslaughter. All of a sudden, the DA brings Deanne Miller and her lawyer into the office, says, we have to drop the charges down because he had no substances in his system. What? And even Deanne's lawyer is like, that's not a
It's not
circumstance.
relevant.
Yeah, that's not really relevant. Like if you're driving drunk, yes, of course. If you're high, yes, of course. But that's not the only circumstance that you can charge someone with vehicular manslaughter. If you're negligent,
Yeah, reckless driving at minimum.
right. So they dropped it down. I can't remember what the term would have been, or the sentencing would have been. But basically, he got just under a year in jail. And, one of the things she told me, like, she struggled with all this stuff. And so she scheduled a meeting because she wanted to at least like hear the human side from this guy. And she sat down across from this guy, and all he did was complain about how he was hurt and why is this woman in front of me? And she said he never said, I'm sorry. He never said, I'm sorry for his death. I should have done this. Zero accountability. And for someone who lost her husband to hear that this person doesn't even care, right? He was negligent, right? You and I can make a mistake and we can be negligent and hurt somebody, but at least like show that you have some empathy or sorry or something like that. He had none. And that was like the death knell. So not only she didn't get any justice, she didn't get an apology. The only sort of justice that she got was ICE came and got him. She was able to get in contact with ICE. And as soon as he walked out of jail, they arrested him and got him deported into the middle of nowhere in Mexico.
For the 17th time.
Yes. So I would love to be like, well, that's the only circumstance, but that's the pattern that I've seen in every situation. Um, Illegal immigration has become political, so local DAs do not want to prosecute to the nth degree. Many of them don't want to prosecute at all. They set it up in legal limbo. They don't want to honor ICE detainers because many of these become sanctuary states. And so, one particular family I was talking to, they basically gave the guy an option. Do you want to go to jail? Or you want to get deported? And he opted to be deported.
Of course. Of course.
And so, where's the justice? The family member is gone. Where's the justice? And that's the pattern that happens over and over. And back to insurance. Some of these guys have insurance, some of them don't. So now you lost someone, but now you have to scrounge and kick and fight to get insurance money to at least help you. I'm talking
Because
to
you
a
lost an
family.
income.
You lost an income. Yeah. I'm talking to a family right now that's dealing with this. Um, I'm talking to a sister who lost her brother, and this is out in Oregon. I think he was an engineer with a wife and two kids. Gone. He was the breadwinner. And there's no insurance. They're fighting tooth and nail to get some sort of insurance. There's no accountability from the state. Why did this guy have a non-domicile CDL from California? Where's the accountability? And so that's my motivating factor for doing this film is because the article that I wrote for the New York Post, um, I couldn't let it go because I was like, this is terrible. This is probably the worst thing that I've come across writing about all these different topics that are going on. There's no justice for these people. There's no one advocating for them except for, a handful of, trucking industry people who are advocating for them. There's no one hearing their side, hearing what they're going through. And I wanted to, and it's painful for me because I don't like sitting in front of these people and asking them some of the most painful questions, um, and having them cry. But you know what? Maybe that's what's necessary. You know, George Floyd changed the world. One man's story changed the world. Maybe DM Miller's story will make people wake up and be like, oh, there is present danger at hand here. Oh, that's why we shouldn't have illegal immigrants driving trucks. Oh, it really is dangerous. Oh, this could be the outcome.
Could be you.
Um, could be you. Exactly. And one other devastating thing about her situation, he was killed in her town. So every day she has to drive past where he was killed. And that truck is still there.
They haven't removed it after 2 years. Oh no, that's probably a highway transportation thing. They have to leave the.
I don't know the reason why, other than it was a shady trucking company anyways, and no one's gonna come and
Oh,
get
that's
it.
true. Nobody knows who owns it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't believe
I
I
mean, they
can't
know
believe.
who owns it, but they're not going to come and get it. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they don't care. So right now it's
They're getting
sitting
towed too.
literally on someone's property. It's like it's a propane company. I actually have pictures of it. Um, it's sitting there. So is the metal pipes. So you can see the metal pipes that crushed him to death. And she has to
That's
drive past
awful.
that.
That's awful.
Yeah. So um, one other thing because I don't want to forget to say this. It's important for people to understand that there are no solid statistics as to how many Americans are being injured or killed. Zero. There's no solid statistics because you can't measure this because of how our system actually works. If a truck crashes into a bunch of cars, right? People get hurt or whatever, whether they live or they die. The state troopers show up. The state trooper, especially in particular states, don't care about your immigration status. They don't. And actually, it's not their job to know or care about your immigration
Right.
status. So they're just going to say that Jose got into an accident. Here are the people who are hurt. They're going to do a regular traffic report. And especially if you get a state that has zero interest in finding out whatsoever, and then you have a news apparatus that many times won't even tell you the name of the person who was driving the truck, right? Then you have no idea. You have no idea how many people. So we can look at all these traffic accidents and we have no idea how many of them are legal or not. The only ones that we find out is if they break through into the media atmosphere and somehow someone inquires. And we end up finding out it's so egregious that you can't ignore it, like the Florida crash. It was so egregious that this guy would take a truck and make a U-turn on a highway out of nowhere. Like it just became so egregious that, and he did it in the wrong state of Florida, where they are curious. So that's we have to wait for all these different perfect storms for us to find out. But in the meantime, these people are suffering. Families are being killed. I'm talking to another family. He lost his daughter and the wife of his kids. I mean, the mother of his kids. They were driving together, all gone. And so for every one of these circumstances, to me, these are all avoidable. These are what I would call excess deaths, right? Because the person driving the truck, if they were in their home nation and not here, these people would be alive. That is something we can verify for sure, right? We can't predict everything, but I can tell you for certainty, if that guy was back in Mexico, her husband would be alive and they'd be living the rest of their life together. So, I mean, this is why I care. I care because not just because Americans are being killed, but Americans are being killed and their family members get zero justice. And no one seems to care. And actually, I take that back. Some people are starting to care. Like Sean Duffy is actually starting to care. There actually is some movement as far as um, positive legislation punishing states who are the worst offenders of this stuff. Um, and I think there are other things that are coming through. But and you know me, I'm an advocate for victims. And I just felt like if I write this story and I just move on with my life, like what's going to happen to her? Like no one's going to care. Just going to move on to the next headline. And it didn't feel right because it felt unresolved. It felt like this is this is one of the biggest stories and no one's talking about it. And it's such a critical industry. It's how we all get goods. And this is the system of how we all get goods in our home. Like you said, it's one thing if Walmart has a bunch of Chinese kids making toys in China, right? Not good, but it's not here. I mean, it's out of our face and we're not seeing it. It's another thing when we have this entire system built off of um, basically mafia behavior
Slave labor. Yeah.
and slave labor within our own homeland, driving Amazon trucks all around us throughout this country. And we have no idea, and no one talks about it. And the people who do know what's going on don't seem to care. Um, so if I'm thankful for one thing when it comes to this administration, it's that not just Sean Duffy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the head of the FMCSA, he's speaking truth. They're actually giving voice to the trucking experts who've been yelling about it the most. Um, you saw 60 Minutes just recently do a piece talking about super ego, about the trucking leasing, basically ripping off truckers. There's a lot of stuff. Like we can go on for 2 more hours, and I still wouldn't be done with all the stuff that I'm finding out. So there's so much, and I think Americans should really care about what's happening around them because I hope your mind is blown with everything I'm telling you because there's so much more.
It was the first time and it is again. It's depressing, but it's also encouraging that you're starting to lift the lid on this stuff, and I appreciate what you're doing. Um, I hope that the people listening share this and spread it around and start talking about it because, quite frankly, if you don't, you're complicit. And if the bad thing happens to what I hope this doesn't happen anymore. I hope it stops. But if it ends up happening and you didn't do anything, or you were one of those actively advocating for illegal immigrants to stay in the country doing illegal things, um, you got nobody to blame but yourself. And that's not a good outcome. So thank you. And I know it's a mental health podcast, but this seems to impact a disproportionate number of people whose voices simply are not heard. And I think that takes a negative toll on certainly families, but communities around those families. And they end up in my office trying to process some of this grief and receiving no answers, no closure, no conclusions, no justice, social or otherwise. Um, it's it's really disheartening. So we have to start talking about it. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, as they say. So
Yeah.
if we can promote this conversation, that'd be great. So I want to before you go, I want to mention you do have a couple of books out. They are sitting behind you: The Children We Left Behind, which is the most recent one, and Black Victim to Black Victor, both very good. I've read both of them. And where else can people reach you, and what else do you want them to know?
Yes. This is my books. And thank you for reading them. You're the guy who read it. I appreciate it.
I am one
Um,
guy. I'm the one guy.
you're the one guy.
I don't think I gave you a
Um,
five-star review though. Sorry.
damn it. Um, um, yeah, people can follow me on my Substack, adambcoleman.substack.com. They can check out Wrong Speak. Wrong Speak is a free speech oriented, not completely free speech, but free speech oriented. There's a caveat. Um, Blogging platform. So if you have something to say, you want to say it intelligently, you can submit an article. Um, and so you can go to wrongspeakpublishing.com to find the Substack page. Um, or you can go to wrongspeak.net for more information on the entire team and what we're doing. Um, the documentary that I'm working on, it is called The Illegal Highways. I'm still in the process of filming. Filmed the one family, the one I was just saying before, and a number of experts. Um, and there's more to come. I'm very thankful for all the people who actually believe in this. And whenever I talk about it, especially trucking families, um, it means a lot to them because they're like, we left the trucking industry because we saw this problem happening. And like someone, thank you so much for speaking up. I realized like the trucking community has probably had like one of the smallest voices in such a critical arena, and no one's cared because they just see them as a body that's just turning a steering wheel. Um, and so I'm glad to give their industry a voice to highlight what is going on because they want people to know what's going on so there's change. Um, but I especially wanted to um, give an avenue for the victims and the families and to tell their stories because they're human beings. So these aren't just numbers because that gets lost. Someone died, maybe you see a name here or there, but like you don't see that they were a husband and they were loved and that people are still struggling even though it happened years ago. Um, so that's what I hope to convey. It is not going to be a fun movie whatsoever. It is, you're going to be crying within the first 10 minutes. It is a somber film because this is the reality that we've created. We've created a system that has allowed for innocent Americans to be killed because there are corporations that want to make money and we've allowed for foreign entities to enter our markets and do whatever they want and circumvent everything that they want to do, and there's no repercussions for them. And so all of that has a consequence, and that consequence is the lives of innocent people around our country.
Well, thanks, man. Really proud to know you. I'm glad we connected. I'm proud to call you a friend, and thank you for all the work you're doing. You are doing the Lord's work, and I certainly appreciate it. So, on behalf of our Zephyr Wellness family and our Noggin Notes family around the world, we wish you all great mental wellness. Bye bye.